Throughout history, Russia relied on the same survival strategy in war: retreat deeper into its territory and use geography as a weapon against invading armies. When Napoleon marched toward Moscow, Russia pulled back and allowed distance, hunger, and winter to destroy the French forces. When Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, Soviet industry was moved behind the Ural Mountains and rebuilt far from the battlefield. For generations, this immense territorial depth gave Russia a sense of invincibility. The idea was simple and brutal at the same time. Even if the enemy advanced, Russia could always fall back into the endless interior and recover its strength. That strategy became one of the central myths behind Russian military identity and national survival. Vladimir Putin also depended heavily on this historical doctrine during the war in Ukraine. As Ukrainian strikes became more dangerous and more accurate, Russia started relocating some of its most valuable military assets farther east. Among those assets were the Su-57 stealth fighters, aircraft considered the crown jewels of Russian aviation technology. These jets were transferred toward the Chelyabinsk region near the foothills of the Ural Mountains. The distance alone seemed to guarantee security. Chelyabinsk sits roughly 1,700 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. For decades, Russian military planners believed such depth created a natural shield impossible for enemies to penetrate. Mountains, distance, air defenses, and sheer geography were all supposed to protect these critical assets from attack. But the war unfolding in Ukraine is not following the old rules of 20th century conflict. The battlefield has transformed into something entirely different from the wars Russia once studied in military academies. Instead of giant armored columns slowly advancing across territory, small unmanned systems now travel silently across enormous distances. Technology has started erasing the value of geography itself. What happened during the night of April 25, 2026, shocked observers across the world. That night, the Shegel Air Base in the Chelyabinsk region reportedly became the target of one of the most daring drone infiltration operations of the entire war. Ukraine's long-range unmanned aerial vehicles crossed deep into Russian territory despite multiple layers of air defense systems. The strike demonstrated that even the deepest parts of Russia were no longer untouchable. According to reports emerging after the attack, the drones avoided radar detection almost completely. Russian early warning systems either failed to identify the threat in time or were unable to react effectively once the drones entered the area. The unmanned aircraft reportedly reached the airbase directly and struck valuable military targets parked on the aprons. For Russia, the implications were deeply disturbing. These were not ordinary military vehicles sitting at the base. The targets included some of the most expensive and technologically advanced aircraft inside the Russian Air Force inventory. Ukrainian officials later claimed that several high-value combat aircraft suffered damage during the operation. Among them were reportedly two Su-57 fifth-generation stealth fighters and one Su-34 bomber aircraft. Another Sukhoi aircraft was also said to have sustained heavy damage during the strike. If accurate, the attack represented far more than a tactical success for Ukraine. It symbolized a direct challenge against Russia's image of military superiority and strategic security. The psychological impact alone carried enormous consequences. Ukrainian commanders described the strike as proof that no location inside Russia could still be considered safe. The operation also reinforced a growing Ukrainian strategy focused on long-range asymmetric warfare. Instead of matching Russia tank for tank or missile for missile, Ukraine increasingly relies on low-cost precision drone systems. These drones are cheaper, faster to produce, and much harder to predict. Open-source intelligence analysts quickly began examining satellite imagery from the region. Analysts compared photographs taken before and after the reported attack to identify signs of damage around the airbase. Several researchers pointed to visible burn marks, damaged areas near aircraft packing zones, and unusual movement patterns by Russian ground crews afterward. These observations fueled further speculation that the strike had achieved significant results. Some satellite images appeared to show hurried attempts to relocate damaged aircraft into enclosed hangars after the attack. For analysts studying the war, such behavior suggested that Russian personnel were trying to conceal the full extent of the damage. Whether every Ukrainian claim was fully accurate or not, the reaction itself revealed a growing sense of alarm inside Russian military circles. The event immediately triggered debate across defense communities around the world. Russia officially denied major damage to its aircraft fleet. However, official denials have become common throughout the conflict whenever sensitive military losses are involved. At the same time, previous Russian statements acknowledged that Ukrainian long-range drones had increasingly threatened regions once considered entirely secure. That contradiction created additional pressure on Moscow's credibility. To fully understand the significance of the strike, it is important to understand what the Su-57 represents for Russia. The Su-57 is not simply another combat aircraft inside the Russian arsenal. It is presented as Russia's answer to advanced Western stealth fighters like the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II. For years, Russian state media promoted the aircraft as a symbol of national technological achievement and military modernization. The aircraft was specifically marketed as a fifth-generation stealth platform capable of avoiding radar detection. It was designed to combine advanced maneuverability, precision strike capabilities, and reduced radar visibility into a single system. Russia hoped that Jet would eventually become a major export success and strengthen its position in the global arms market. Billions of dollars in prestige and future revenue became attached to the program. Yet despite years of development, the Su-57 program faced serious production difficulties from the very beginning. Manufacturing targets repeatedly fell behind schedule while technical challenges slowed expansion of the fleet. By early 2026, estimates suggested that Russia possessed only a relatively small number of operational Su-57 aircraft. Some analysts estimated the total fleet at roughly 30 to 50 units, including prototypes. That number is extremely small compared to American fifth-generation fighter inventories. Because the fleet remains limited, every single aircraft carries extraordinary strategic and symbolic value. If even two Su-57 fighters suffered permanent damage during the Shagu strike, the percentage loss to the fleet would be significant. For Russia, replacing those aircraft would not be simple or fast. The attack also exposed another painful reality. This was not the first time Ukrainian drones reportedly targeted Su-57 aircraft inside Russian territory. Earlier attacks during previous years already forced Russia to move valuable assets farther away from the front lines in search of safety. The relocation toward the Urals was itself evidence of growing concern inside the Kremlin. But even those massive distances no longer guaranteed protection. Modern drone systems now possess operational ranges extending well beyond 2,000 kilometers in some cases. This means geography alone cannot provide the security buffer it once offered during earlier wars. The battlefield has effectively expanded across the entire territory of both nations. One of the most troubling questions raised after the strike involved Russian air defense systems. Russia invested enormous resources into layered defense networks, including S-400 systems, radar stations, electronic warfare capabilities, and early warning infrastructure. These systems were promoted as among the most advanced defensive technologies in the world. Yet Ukrainian drones still appeared capable of penetrating deep into Russian territory. Critics immediately began asking how relatively inexpensive drones could bypass defenses costing billions of dollars. Some experts argued that small, low-flying drones are inherently difficult to detect consistently across huge areas. Others suggested that Russia's air defense networks were overstretched by the sheer size of the country they needed to protect. Either explanation revealed serious vulnerabilities. The psychological consequences of these operations may ultimately matter even more than the physical damage itself. Imagine being a Russian pilot stationed thousands of kilometers from active combat zones. You believe you are serving at one of the safest locations in the country, far removed from the dangers of the front lines. Then suddenly explosions erupt in the middle of the night inside your own base. That kind of experience fundamentally changes perceptions of safety and control. The personnel who once believed distance protected them begin realizing that nowhere is truly secure anymore. Fear spreads slowly but powerfully through military organizations when confidence in protection disappears. Morale can deteriorate long before battlefield positions collapse. The psychological burden extends beyond individual soldiers. Commanders also face enormous pressure when they cannot guarantee security for strategic assets deep inside national territory. Every successful drone strike forces military leaders to reconsider assumptions that shaped decades of defense planning. Traditional concepts of protected rear areas are becoming increasingly obsolete. Russian military personnel are now confronting a form of warfare unlike the conflicts their institutions originally prepared for. Massive air defense batteries and expensive radar networks were designed primarily to stop conventional aircraft and missiles. Small drones operating in swarms present an entirely different category of challenge. They are cheap, adaptable, difficult to track, and capable of overwhelming defensive systems through numbers alone. Ukraine has increasingly embraced this asymmetric approach throughout the conflict. Rather than competing directly with Russia's larger industrial base, Ukraine focuses on maximizing efficiency and cost-effectiveness. Relatively inexpensive drone systems can inflict damage worth hundreds of millions of dollars against high-value targets. That imbalance creates dangerous long-term economic pressure for Russia. According to various Ukrainian statements, drone operations now represent one of the most financially efficient aspects of the war effort. A drone costing only thousands of dollars may potentially destroy equipment worth tens or even hundreds of millions. This creates an extraordinary cost imbalance, rarely seen at such scale in modern military history. The economic mathematics become increasingly difficult for the defending side to sustain.